Hello, Ryan Conroy here for another Timeless Tales, sponsored by our friends at Vidian Chevrolet. This year, Phoenixville is celebrating its 175th anniversary. But there's a lot more history to learn about before 1849. In this episode, we're going to talk about its first beginnings. The first inhabitants of what would later become the borough of Phoenixville were the Lenape American Indians. Their tribe inhabited the land for 10,000 years, at a time when the French Creek was called Sankenak and the Schuylkill River was called Manayunk. They lived in longhouses along the river and in the hills of Black Rock. They had an abundance of food from fishing in the river and creeks, hunting in the forest of what is now known as the north side of Phoenixville, and later growing crops. In the late 1600s, not long after Philadelphia had been settled, Charles Pickering, an Englishman who crossed the Atlantic with William Penn, came up the Schuylkill River in search of treasure in Chester County. Upon arriving in the stream, which now bears his name, Pickering discovered what he believed to be traces of silver. Thinking he could make a fortune on his finding, he returned to Philadelphia and purchased a land grant from William Penn for several thousand acres. Pickering returned to the area with a friend named Tinker who had mining experience. Together they dug a cave in the side of a hill, made a roof, and laid a stone floor, and began mining the metal. This cave would become the first dwelling built by a European settler in our area. Not long after his venture, Charles Pickering died, and his land, which consisted of 5,386 acres, known as the Pickering Tract and the Mine Hole Tract, was divided between 16 of his friends. The naming of the earliest neighborhoods derived from Pickering, including Charlestown, which originally included present-day Charlestown and Schuylkill Township, and the borough of Phoenixville. One of the separations of Pickering's land became the Manavon Tract in 1713, named by its owner David Lloyd, the first justice in Chester County and later Speaker of the Assembly. Manavon, whose name is believed to have originated from Lloyd's home parish in Wales, was a 1,000-acre piece of land that straddled the French Creek. When Europeans first arrived at Manavon, a village of the Lenape longhouses still stood on the low land near the river. Trails connected all the main areas in Chester County to Philadelphia, one of which would become what we now know as Route 23. The first settler upon the Manavon Tract was Francis Buckwalter, a German Mennonite immigrant who purchased 650 acres from Lloyd in 1720. In 1731, Moses Coates purchased 150 acres of land of what is now known as the north side of Phoenixville and built a small house. Not long after Coates arrived, he talked his friend James Starr into coming up from Newcastle, Delaware. Starr and his two sons bought land and erected a dwelling and a grist mill, the first business in what would become known as Phoenixville. The grist mill was built upon the French Creek. Its waters powered the mill. This property would later become the site of the nail works and then the Phoenix Iron Company. The Starr House, built in 1732, still stands at 10 North Main Street and is the oldest structure in Phoenixville. After the Manavon Tract was divided out, Phoenixville was now known as Charlestown Township, and then later on, Schuylkill Township would be carved out of that. The name Phoenixville is first seen to be used in the 1820s, but it wasn't until 1849 when Phoenixville would be incorporated as a borough. Many things were to develop in the area after this time and mold into a town we love to know as Phoenixville. Once again, I would like to thank Vidian Chevrolet for sponsoring this episode of Timeless Tales. So until next time, stay tuned.